Once upon a time, there lived a very lazy woman who, despite her beauty and sharp tongue, was famous in the whole village for being lazy. Her name was Nkem, and not only was she lazy, she was as stubborn as a locked padlock. Nkem never cleaned, washed, cooked, or agreed to have a child for her husband. She believed children were a burden and housework was for fools. Out of frustration, she encouraged her husband Obiora to marry a second wife who would give him children and handle the domestic chores that she avoided. The second wife, Amara, was everything Nkem was not: hardworking, fertile, and respectful. But even with Amara in the house, Nkem refused to lift a finger. At almost 40, she would spend her days in bed, painting her nails and eating the food that Amara had prepared. She never fetched water, never went to the farm, and never joined the other women who went to the evening market. All Nkem did was find new excuses for her idleness, each one more outrageous than the last, and the villagers, who had grown tired of her ways, began to call her the queen of laziness. Nkem had perfected the art of doing nothing. If Obiora complained, she would wave him off with a lazy smile and say, "My dear, this beauty you enjoy does not maintain itself. Rest is part of my job." Amara, on the other hand, was a whirlwind of activity: cooking, cleaning, washing clothes, and tending to her children with a smile. People in the village whispered that if it wasn't for Amara, Obiora would have chased Nkem away long ago. But Nkem remained unmoved. She liked her life the way it was, free from stress and responsibility. The blue basins in the corner of the backyard told her story vividly. They overflowed with her dirty clothes that had not seen water in months. Flies buzzed over the pile like little judges passing sentences. Yet, Nkem refused to touch them. She claimed washing gave her a headache. So one morning, she called Amara and ordered her to wash all the clothes. Amara was 7 months pregnant, but Nkem did not care. She stood there like a dictator as she pointed at the dirty clothes, her nails tapping against the table as she informed Amara that she wanted the clothes washed before noon. Amara looked at her swollen feet, then at the mountain of clothes. "Nkem, the midwife warned me not to overwork myself." But Nkem rolled her eyes. "Pregnancy is not sickness. Did our mothers not farm? Fetch water and pound yam whilst carrying babies? Stop talking and start washing." With no choice, Amara carried the heavy basins towards the stream. But as she soaked the first batch of clothes, something unusual happened. An old woman approached her and saw a scarf that was in the pile. She picked up the scarf, smiling as she gave Amara a small pouch, saying that her spirit led her to hand over the pouch to Amara once she saw the scarf. Amara refused to take the pouch, but the old woman insisted, saying that she meant no harm. Left with no other option, Amara took the pouch from the woman, thanking her for her kindness. She held the pouch in her hands, thinking that it was just ordinary cowries or small change. So, she set it aside as she finished washing the rest of the clothes. When she got home hours later, curiosity got the better part of her. Amara untied the leather string around the pouch and poured the contents into her hand. Her mouth fell open as she stared down at the diamonds in her hands. They were so sparkling, and Amara could not contain her excitement. The diamonds were unlike anything that she had ever seen. Amara, being a poor orphan, had never held such wealth in her entire life. She danced around the compound, calling out her husband to come see what a stranger had given to her. "God has remembered me," she shouted, lifting the diamonds high as her husband jubilated with her. Soon, the news spread like wildfire as women gathered, murmuring in awe, to see diamonds for the first time. When Nkem heard the story of how the woman gave Amara the diamonds because of her scarf, her face hardened. She walked straight to Amara and demanded for the diamonds. "Give them to me," she said, revealing that the old woman only gave her diamonds because of her scarf. "If I didn't send you to wash my dirty clothes, the old woman would not have seen my scarf and given you the diamonds, so the diamonds are mine," she stated angrily as she tried to snatch the diamonds from Amara. But Amara held the diamonds tight, insisting that fate had brought it to her. Nkem was so furious. Her eyes narrowed as she stepped closer. her voice sharp enough to cut as she began to speak. Amara, don't be foolish. Those diamonds were meant for me. If my scarf had not been in that pile, that old woman would have walked right past you. You are only holding what is rightfully mine. But Amara's fingers tightened around the pouch until her knuckles turned white. None came, she said firmly. You sent me to wash out of laziness, not kindness. I walked under the hot sun with my swollen feet, and these gifts came into my hands. The woman did not ask for you. She gave them to me freely. Their voices rose, echoing through the compound until neighbors began to gather. Whispers began to weave through the crowd. Some sided with Nkem, saying that it was indeed her scarf that caught the old woman's attention. Others shook their heads, pointing out that blessings follow those who walk, not those who lie in bed, painting their nails. Obiora, drawn by the noise, stepped into the middle. He looked at the diamonds, then at the two women. The truth is simple, he said. Fate rewards the hands that work. Nkem, if you had washed your own clothes, maybe the old woman would have given you the gift herself, but you didn't, and the blessing passed on to the one who labored. The crowd murmured their agreement as Nkem's face flushed with humiliation. She returned to her room furious, determined to get her own diamonds at all costs. The next morning, Nkem packed all her clothes to the stream. She kept the staff on top of the pile of clothes as she sat on a rock, waiting patiently for the old woman to come. Hours later, a young girl approached her to beg for help. My father is sick in the bush, the little girl said, as she pleaded for Nkem to help her sick father, who had just fallen in the bush nearby. But Nkem looked at her from head to toe and scoffed. Go and ask someone else. I'm waiting for someone important, she said, turning her face back to the part where she hoped the old woman would appear. The girl's eyes filled with tears as she walked away. Minutes later, an old woman walked by and approached her. She complimented the scarf, and Nkem's face lit with joy as she believed that the old woman would hand over diamonds to her. Her smile was as wide as a child who had been promised some candy. The old woman smiled at her warmly, holding a red pouch in her hand as she began to speak. My dear, I'm only but a poor woman. I have nothing to give to you, but I have a favor to ask. I'll be glad if you could help me weed the grass around my house. Yesterday, I almost stepped on a snake that was hiding in the overgrown bush. If you could help me clear it, I'll be most grateful, she said to Nkem, whose smile faded in that instant. Are you saying you are poor and you don't have jewels to give to me? Nkem asked the old woman, who nodded and pleaded for her help. Nkem's face instantly darkened as she began to speak. You want me to weed the grass around your house? She repeated, wrinkling her nose like the word itself was dirty. Ah, Mama, my back has been hurting me for weeks. Even to carry this bucket to the stream was a struggle. Maybe you should ask those strong village boys. They enjoy that kind of thing, she said to the old woman, who tilted her head and promised that it won't take long. I'll give you food in exchange, the old woman said to Nkem, who was already shaking her head, waving her hand as though shooing away a fly. Mama, I wish I could help, but I'm waiting for someone important here. Besides, the sun is too hot. My skin burns easily, she said to the old woman, whose smile faded as she looked so disappointed. She nodded slowly and began to walk away, when the pouch that she held in her hand dropped to the floor and a single diamond dropped out of the bag, catching the attention of Nkem, who rushed to help the old woman. Nkem offered to help the woman weed the grass around her house, but the old woman refused her help as she continued to walk away. Nkem, filled with so much greed, picked up a huge stick and hit the old woman on her head. She watched with satisfaction as the old woman fell to the ground unconscious. Nkem snatched her pouch filled with diamonds. Before anyone could appear, she ran to the stream to pack her clothes, which were stacked by the river's side. Nkem did not look back. By the time she reached their compound, she had already rehearsed her lie. I too have been blessed, she announced loudly, her voice ringing out like a town crier. The same way Amara received her diamonds, the old woman has blessed me as well, she said as children stopped playing. Women paused, and men opened their eyes wide with excitement. All eyes turned to Nkem as she opened the pouch, letting a few sparkling stones catch the sunlight. Gasps filled the entire atmosphere as everyone prayed for such blessings to locate them too. But what no one knew was that Nkem's so-called blessing had been snatched by force, and that the curse, far greater than her laziness, now trailed closely behind her. That night, Nkem went to bed hugging the stolen pouch of diamonds like it was a child. She smiled to herself, thinking of all the fine dresses and shoes that she would buy just to make Amara jealous. But in the deep stillness of the night, as the moonlight crept into her room, something strange began to happen. The pouch disappeared, and Nkem let out a terrifying scream. She woke up clutching her stomach, her skin burning as though she had been thrown into a burning furnace. She rolled on her bed, kicking and crying out in pain. Her eyes felt as if someone had poured boiling oil into them. Then, diamonds began to fall from her eyes. Big, sparkling, beautiful diamonds, just like the ones that she had stolen. However, before her hands could touch them, they vanished into thin air. Nkem tried to stop crying, biting her lips hard, but the moment she held back her tears, the burning in her body intensified. It was as if an invisible flame licked her skin, forcing her to wail louder. The more she cried, the more diamonds poured out of her eyes and disappeared. Nkem was trapped in a cruel punishment, forever burning and never holding the wealth that she so desired. By midday, the whole village had gathered outside her hut, peeping through the windows as they whispered to themselves in horror. Nkem, unable to bear the pain any longer, confessed all that she did. Everyone opened their mouths in terror as they rushed the bush to search for the old woman, who was nowhere to be found. Her co-wife Amara stood quietly in the crowd as she shook her head. She could not believe the length Nkem was willing to go just to prove a point to her. What she knew, however, was that lazy hands and a greedy heart never escape judgment. The villagers all gathered as they bundled Nkem out of the house and deliberated on what to do to her. Not only was she a thief, she had also tried to kill an old woman whose only crime was asking for help. Although the woman was not found, the villagers decided to punish her for her wrongdoing. Some villagers suggested that she be stoned to death for the grave atrocity that she had committed, but Amara stood by and countered their suggestion, saying that the old woman was never found, revealing that she might still be alive somewhere, so Nkem should be punished instead. The majority agreed with her, and they ordered Nkem to wash the clothes of all the widows in the village until the old woman who she tried to kill comes forward and forgives her. Nkem had no other option but to do as she was instructed. The widows of the village were ordered to submit their dirty clothes to her every morning, and Nkem did as the villagers had said. She spent her days by the stream, washing clothes in pain as her body burned and her eyes cried diamonds that disappeared once they fell from her eyes. Every day was a torture as Nkem prayed to see the old woman again. But weeks passed and the old woman was nowhere to be found. She apologized to her co-wife Amara and thanked her for standing up for her. Nkem looked everywhere for the old woman, who seemed to have disappeared from the village. Each day she washed by the stream, she prayed to see the old woman again, but her prayers were never answered. One evening, whilst washing the clothes in pain, an old man approached her and pleaded for her to help him. He wanted her to fetch some water from the stream. "My house is not far away," he said to Nkem, who he pleaded to help him carry the water home. Nkem was in so much pain. The skies had already turned dark as the rains were about to pour. Nkem thought about the time that she would take away just to help the man. She still had so many clothes to wash and did not know what to do. However, something within her spirit urged her to help him, so she fetched the water for him and walked with him to his house, which she realized was deep in the forest. Nkem could not understand how a man like him decided to live alone in the forest. On the way, heavy rain began to fall, and Nkem hurried with the man as they arrived his little hut. When she got there, the old man thanked her for her help. He pleaded with her to stay in his hut until the rain stops, and Nkem agreed, seeing how heavy the rain was. She sat in the hut as she waited for the rain to subside. The old man thanked her for her kindness. However, he could not ignore the sadness that he saw in her eyes. He sat across from her and asked what the problem was, and Nkem narrated the whole story to him. The old man urged her never to give up, as miracles happen faster than we can ever imagine. Those words filled her with courage as she waited for the rain to stop. Minutes later, Nkem returned to the stream to finish her washing. She returned home that evening and met Amara in pain. She was in labor and their husband had still not returned. So Nkem rushed Amara to the midwife's hut. They had just finished a delivery as Nkem watched them take Amara into the hut to deliver her baby. She sat in the corner as a young woman approached her to ask for help. My sister just gave birth now and we don't have any money to pay, the young woman said to Nkem, who asked her to wait while she returned home to get some money. Nkem could not believe how her heart had changed. She had always been so greedy, but the events of the past weeks had taught her what greed can do to a person. She arrived home and met her husband Obiora, who she told about Amara, who was currently giving birth to their baby. Nkem grabbed some money as they both rushed off to the midwife's hut. When she arrived, she met the young woman who had just given birth. Nkem asked for her sister and the woman looked at her confused. I don't have a sister, she said to Nkem, who stood there shocked as she wondered what was happening. In that moment, Nkem heard the town crier announce that she, Nkem, had been set free from her punishment. The pain she felt all over her body disappeared and the diamonds that fell from her eyes stopped. Nkem stood in stunned silence, unable to process what had just happened. The young woman who had begged her for help was nowhere in sight, and the sister she spoke of did not know who she was. What Nkem did not know was that the old woman she had been looking for disguised herself both as the old man in the forest and the young lady who just asked her for help. The disguises had been a test of her heart, a test of her patience, her willingness to show kindness without expecting reward. Her punishment had been lifted, not because she had suffered enough, but because she had finally chosen compassion over greed. Nkem sank to her knees on the dusty road outside the healer's hut as tears poured freely down her cheeks. For the first time in months, there was no burning, no vanishing diamonds, just the warmth of relief and the quiet sting of humility. From that day forward, Nkem washed not only the widow's clothes, she began to do all the chores in their home as she cooked for Amara and also nursed her newborn baby. Nkem, after doing all this, finally agreed to have children of her own. And although the old woman never appeared again, Nkem lived her life as though she might return at any moment, ready, this time, to pass the test without hesitation. The lesson to be learned from this story is that kindness without expectation is the purest form of wealth. A lazy hand may avoid work for a time, but the day always comes when the heart must be tested, and only those who chose compassion will pass. Always remember that blessings can come in many disguises, and the smallest act of help may be the key to freedom from life's greatest burdens. I hope you enjoyed the story.